Say the Semantics, episode 384. It is August 17th, 2026. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Monday night, pretty late into the night. But I just felt like recording. It's been a little bit since I've put out anything, and I thought this was ample time to do so. It just felt like the right opportunity, and I'm feeling I have this kind of this weird post day energy, where it's like where things go into the night, and then you have this almost resurgence of energy, and you're thinking to yourself like, why am I what am I supposed to do with this, and how am I gonna fall asleep and stuff like that. So I'm gonna take advantage of that. Maybe this will be a way for me to fall asleep. Maybe this will be a way for me to tire myself out. So that is what we're going with. But yeah, it's been good. I think sort of similar. I guess like in a similar position to when I was last recording in terms of where I feel like I am creatively, and really trying to kind of tap into that part of me a little bit more, especially kind of on the writing side of things. So just kind of continuing to do so on that front has been very rewarding in a lot of ways. It's also been tough too, because there's a lot of there's a lot of exercises that require me to push myself in ways that I haven't really done so in quite some time, really outside of any other writing classes that I've taken. So that's been good, but yeah, I really I've been enjoying the class that I've been taking, and I've been enjoying kind of trying to tap into that more as time has gone along, and it's something that I really want to commit myself to. It's really something that I really want to put my time and energy into, because I do think it's very important for myself. But I think that if it feels I have a sense, well, I guess not exactly a full picture of what the direction I'm going is. I don't know if I don't know if that's clearly in mind yet, but I do feel there is momentum building towards something. And I think that's better than no movement at all. So I think that is where I feel where things feel good for the time being. I think that there is some type of momentum. I think as long as I have kind of this sustained commitment to doing some writing, excuse me, on a daily basis, I think that's going to allow me to really get to a place where I'm really feeling comfortable, and I'm really just putting my all into things creatively. So yeah, there's still things that I'm working on. I did create a Substack. I don't know if I mentioned that. I haven't done anything with it yet, because I do want to create a type of direction with it. I mean, honestly, it just might be a thing where I'm just writing for the sake of writing, but I do want to create things of certain topics, and conversations and discussions about the things that I care the most about. So that's I do want to kind of curate that page specifically for that. And so I guess I'm just kind of figuring that part out as well, and trying to find the time. As I've gotten a little busier with work, it's been a little harder, but I do really want to try to carve out the time to do to work on stuff like that. So that's kind of tucked in the back of my mind, and I'm going to bring it to fruition. It's just a matter of time and finding that time and energy to do so. But it's been good. It's been really fun, and I think the process of me becoming a better writer is going to be a long road. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to be this point A to point B type of situation. It's going to take a while. It's going to take some bumps in the road. It's going to take me receiving feedback from people and receiving constructive criticism, because it's hard for me to be able to tell. When you're reading your own writing, I think you can both overly criticize and then understate what you're trying to convey to the reader. Sometimes it's a little hard. And for example, if let's say a certain sentence doesn't quite make sense, that's not something that I'm always able to catch. And I think having a reader actually read my work and provide their thoughts back will give me some clarity and some understanding of the things that I can get better at, right? I mean, that's just feedback, and how to utilize feedback and just getting better at things in general. But that is something that that I do want to kind of lean into more as time goes along. I think I want there to be discussions and conversations about my work, and I want to be receptive to that feedback, because that will be the thing that allows me to grow and become a better writer. So that's kind of the next, is sort of like the evolution. First is sort of like working through my current processes and figuring out what my voice is, and that kind of stuff. And then the next step after that is going to be putting, outside of just putting pen to paper, but also putting it out to a more public setting, where more people can see it, because then that's going to allow for just more feedback and more just more conversations. And I think hearing more voices and more people talk about it, I think is going to give me a sense of what type of direction that I want to go with, and the audience too that I would like to have, that I would like to read my work. So yeah, that's kind of been something that I've been working on outside of work, and just I guess outside of, I mean, that is kind of part of my leisure time, but yeah, mostly outside of work. So that's been rewarding in a lot of ways, and I'm hoping that it can continue to be rewarding. Outside of that, I've been, like I mentioned, I played through the first Xenoblade game once again. I already talked about this. And then I think the last time I recorded, I was playing through Xenoblade 2. I finished that game on, was it Saturday? I think it was Saturday, was when I beat my kind of second full playthrough of 2. Or was it third? I think it was second. I think it was my second playthrough of 2. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed just the things I talked about. I think this will be something where I talk about and expand on more. I know there's been so many conversations and discussions and YouTube essays about Xenoblade 2, and I'm hoping that I can provide a little bit more of my own kind of perspective with the game, because I do think it's a little bit different. I mean, every perspective is different. Everyone's voice is different, but I'm hoping that when I talk about it, I can give a little bit more of a sense of what my journey or whatever has been with Xenoblade 2 in particular, because I think it is definitely the most it is definitely the most different out of the main trilogy. And I think it's worth talking about because overall, as a game, it's a great game. It's really fun. Music, combat, environment, those are all top notch. I think there are, and I started to kind of notice this as well as the game and story progressed, but the story does pick up. It absolutely does. I think the bonds feel a little bit more strengthened between the characters as things progress. I do really notice that, especially the way in which the story kind of develops and sort of opens up, and there's kind of that discovery and learning about what actually happened with some of the characters. They really do kind of backload a lot of that information towards the end of the game, and I understand that that's kind of one of the things that draws in the player, because you want to understand the villain's motivations and why they are the way they are, and stuff like that. But I do think that they really kind of instead of it being this kind of slow unravel, it's a lot more kind of sudden. It feels like, maybe because I don't know, they leave little hints here and there through the story, but they just kind of like do a whole they dump a lot of information, especially at towards the end of the game, which is really, to be fair, like that's what they do in all of these games in a lot of instances. At sort of the emotional climax of each of these games is when they provide most of the information dump, or the back story dump, if you want to call it that. That's kind of when they try to hit you with that information, so that both when the emotions are heightened, the character motivations are provided, which gives more credence and gives more of a connection to between you as the player and the characters in the game. So I understand kind of the way in which that was, how that was kind of laid out. I think in two in particular, though, I think there are some. I don't know if I would call it. I just think I wasn't the biggest fan of the way in which things developed, because I think while there is something very compelling about wanting to discover, say, what's at the top of the world tree, it's I don't know if it's necessarily enough to I was just kind of thinking about why that hook wasn't exactly the biggest thing for me, is because there is something about just like the characters and the way that they're presented. So for example, Rex being the main character, one of the reasons why I think he didn't quite hook me in comparison to some of the other protagonists in the series is because it already feels like he is who he is, which I think is both a strength and a weakness in some instances. Because throughout the game, I what does he learn to do? It's kind of hard because he's already like, oh, I love this world, I love the people, and we're gonna save the world, and that's a through line for the entirety of the game. So the fact that his character doesn't really go through the typical arc of a protagonist, he does have a moment where there is a sense of loss and he has to kind of regain it, but it felt more of like a small dip as opposed to really feeling like he had to overcome this massive hurdle, because he's already established himself as a character who is driven by a particular purpose. His purpose does not change through the game. It really doesn't. Maybe there is a bit more of this added sense of romance between him and Pyra slash Mithra. So I guess that's one of the bigger components of that. But does that really change his character? Because I think him being, him being able to love someone is kind of an extension of him being able to love the world in a sense, right? So it's not like this huge leap. It just feels like a natural progression of his character. Again, which is fine. I think people can take that how they will and appreciate that by how it's presented. But I guess for me, with his character, his arc, and that tying into the overarching plot of the story, just didn't make it as interesting for me, as opposed to kind of Shulk, where he had to really come to terms with a lot of things, right? So I guess that's kind of something that I was thinking about upon kind of my second playthrough. Another thing, and this is probably the biggest thing that I found I had some issue with. It's the pacing. The pacing is one of the it's a tough sell, I would say. It's one of the biggest hurdles, I would say, for most players going through this game for a first time, or even multiple times like myself. I I think especially in there's one of the chapters is extremely egregious in this instance, where it just the plot just completely goes to a complete it just goes to a complete halt, and this side quest kind of is taking place of the main quest. The side quest has really no bearing on the plot. It is just an excursion, and that is it. There is no it's to get a stolen blade core crystal, the rock core crystal, which, listen, I understand that being the emotional tie to Vandom, whatever. But if you look at it, it had really no bearing on the rest of the story, and it meandered, and you have to run around, and it sucks. And I would say that this chapter in particular also has some of the more egregious scenes that a lot of people listen, and I can't even fault them for this, but a lot of people point to as the thing that the game leans into with its like anime tropey nonsense, which I dislike and I will continue to dislike. And the second playthrough of the game did not change my mind on that. I just don't care for it. I don't really think I don't think it's funny. I don't really enjoy it. I just don't care for it at all. And it exists to satisfy a certain audience, and I am not that audience. And I just think that that chapter in particular, I was like looking back on it, it really sort of is this almost, and I really do not blame anybody who played this game, got to this point and was like, I'm throwing in the towel. I would not blame anyone for that, because it just comes to a complete halt. You lose sight of what it is you're exactly doing. Because when I was playing through, I was like, where are we going? Like, first you're on this side quest to go, you lose, you lose the core crystal, you have to get it back. Then you're put back on the main quest, which is to get to More Ardain, and then I think get to Fonset or something. I don't remember. Or I think it was maybe to get to... See, I can't even remember. Like, why are we going to these places? Is kind of what my question was. You lose sight of that, and it feels kind of directionless, right? You're going to place, and there's like things that happen on these titans and these locations that do add to the story, but you kind of are like, why are we here? I guess you don't even question it, because you're just bombarded with like so much stuff happening. You got like the robot maid in the factory. Like it's just like all of these things just thrown at you, and it just feels kind of rudderless in a way. And I think that affects just like the feel and the flow of the story, and not having a sense of where things are going. It just kind of is like, okay, what am I attaching myself to? What should I care about in this moment? Should I care about the character? Should I care about the story? Or is this just kind of like a fun adventure for like a cartoon? That's kind of what it feels like in, pretty large chunks of the game, and especially kind of that middle portion of the game. And it's like, listen, I was working my way through those cutscenes, but like knowing what was like gonna happen, to be honest, I was skipping some cutscenes because I knew that ultimately they had no bearing on the story. It's like, oh, maybe there's like some funny character interactions, but I really don't think it added much in the grand scheme of things. So the pacing, I'm meandering a bit, kind of like how the story was meandering, but it is it does, like, there is just kind of, with there not really being a sense of direction, it makes it really hard to follow what the motivation is. I know, like, the whole thing is like, we're gonna, the ultimate goal is to get to Elysium, but it's like, okay, but now why are we here? Why are the characters here? What brings us here? And stuff like that. And also, kind of going back to that chapter 4 section, there was an emotional climactic moment that happened in the chapter before, and all of that is kind of undercut by this section of the game, where you're almost just forgetting about the sacrifice that a character made and the message that was put on. It's almost like it was just completely it was just like it happened, but nobody, like, it's just like nobody's even reflecting on it. There's even a moment where Rex is like, I've been having kind of some fun lately, and I'm like, do the characters not reflect on anything that happens? Like, that's the thing that made me feel a little bit that's like another thing that kind of made me feel a little disconnected from this game, was the fact that the characters did not really reflect a lot on things that were happening. Like, things were happening and they were sort of reacting to it. Like, things were happening and they responded by doing something, but there was not really. I don't know. There are moments later in the game where the characters are like, "Oh, I wonder why things are the way they are," but again, I think that's kind of that's sort of like back ended. It's sort of backloaded toward the end of the game. Again, it's fine, but I do wish that there was a bit more balance in terms of being like, hey, that it's kind of like, being like, oh yeah, we went through this kind of traumatic moment. How are we feeling right now? Are we, and then, or maybe like reflect the thing that's happening. There's like a war going on, and the fact that they're in this kind of military base of sorts, and just kind of talk about that a little bit more. Maybe there's some more additional flavor text that I wasn't paying attention to. Maybe that's on me. But I think in the main story, there was just a bit of a sense, it feels like there was a lack of reflection by the characters of their issues. And I think that only really happens towards the end of the game, which I think is the better half for sure. Like at least like the last third of this game is much better than the first 2/3 or first half of the game. But yeah, I am being pretty critical of this game. I think that it's interesting, and I kind of mentioned this, or I forgot, I don't know if I have mentioned it or not, but I actually enjoyed my first playthrough of this game 6-ish years ago quite a bit, because I knew of the issues going into this game, so my perception was like, okay, I'm going to roll with the punches and I'm going to see how it goes. So I was able to get past some of the things that I don't like, including some of the anime tropey stuff. And I really enjoyed my time with it. I was like, wow, this was like fun. This was a lot of fun. And I was like, this could be comparable. Maybe this is even comparable to Xenoblade 1 in a lot of ways. And then kind of on reflecting and then playing through the second playthrough, I'm seeing the flaws of the story feel a lot more glaring. And it's not even really that I'm like looking at this game with a super critical lens, because I'm not trying to. Like I'm enjoying the game. Like I'm enjoying my time with it, but just feeling out the story beats and getting a sense of the characters and stuff like that. I just unfortunately connected less with this game on my second playthrough than I did on the first time, which is interesting because, this is like kind of the third time or so, because I replayed through Final Fantasy IX last year. I replayed Xenoblade 1 earlier, about a few weeks ago or a month ago. And then I played through, and then I just played through Xenoblade 2. I would say this instance was like one of the examples where it's like, upon revisiting it, there are things that did not work well for me. And part of it was just maybe paying more attention to it and seeing it from a different lens this time around. And again, I really want to be clear. It's not that I'm really not trying to be hypercritical. I'm just like, these are just the apparent things that I've really noticed on this playthrough. And this is like not even me like talking about the gameplay mechanics, which I think there are some issues with. The combat is fine. The combat's a lot of fun. It really develops and really gets stronger as the game goes along. I had to pause for a second, so I lost my train of thought. But yeah, ultimately, I guess like this is kind of the first time where I've revisited a game. I mean, listen, it's not going to be. I'm sure this won't necessarily be the only time, because of course, when I go back and replay some of the older games, I'm gonna find things that, I'm gonna find things that I'll be critical or that I'll criticize, but I think in this instance, I think it's interesting because there is almost this, I wouldn't say it's a reversal of opinion, because I still do really enjoy this game. I have a lot of fond memories of playing it, especially during kind of 2020 and that time period. And maybe that had something to do with me having a bit more of this positive feeling towards it, because I think, maybe just the state of the time, maybe this is the game that I needed. But yeah, I think just revisiting it just didn't quite hit, as the story beats didn't quite hit as hard. The characters, while interesting, I do like this cast of characters, except for one one particular character, which is pretty obvious. I like most of the cast, but I do think that ultimately it just did not quite land for me, especially the story, which is obviously for me one of the more important aspects of games, that these types of games that I want to engage with. Speaking of, so it's so funny, man. Like this I mean, I when I was about to record, I went back through my logs and I saw the title of the Battle of September, and it's funny because I've been just mulling over and thinking about, and I keep flip-flopping about Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, because I believe last time I mentioned I was pretty convinced about wanting to get this game, and then I heard the soundtrack of Trails in the Sky first chapter, and I also saw the kind of the teaser trailer. Again, I think there's like another teaser trailer for second chapter, and I was like, man, I want to go back to that world. I do. And maybe I'm just overthinking it. It's like, whatever, who cares? You can play either game anytime, right? But I do have this craving of wanting to jump into a world that I can really get lost in. While Fortune's Weave has so much content and so many compelling things going about it, I do think the overwhelming amount of things that you can do is potentially detrimental for my own personal for my own personal tastes. I think when there are so many systems that play and so many gameplay mechanics, I think that does take away a little bit about it does take a little bit of my enjoyment of the main gameplay loop, which for me, and has always been for me, the grid-based battle system. I didn't particularly care for the Three Houses loop. I've already talked about this, because the map battles were not really, like, they were still obviously a very big part of the gameplay, but the other bloat was kind of the monastery stuff did take up a huge chunk of the game for me. And I'm a little worried just seeing what's going on. I'm a little worried about that. I'm a little worried that all of these different mechanics are going to take away from the main thing, which is the tactics style gameplay. And I know that there is also the dungeons, which I think are cool. There's like the turn-based combat element of it, which I think is awesome and really cool. But how much of that is going to eat into, I think that on top of the other social elements of the game, how much of that is going to eat into the main gameplay is kind of my question. I'm sure there is like a sense of like you actually don't have to interact with it all that much. But there is just this presentation of choice, which I think is a little daunting. You know what I mean? And while the ability to switch between the four storylines is awesome, I think that's like that is like the biggest upgrade from Three Houses to this. It is still a little overwhelming. It is still a little overwhelming because you have to kind of say you start one storyline, you kind of have to start from the beginning again, and with your characters. I mean, I'm assuming that's the case. It's your characters are weaker again, this kind of thing. How do I have the aptitude to want to go through that? And it's like kind of the same question as I had with Three Houses a little bit, I understand that each storyline is going to be different. It is. And maybe it's great. Maybe there's nothing to worry about, but I think there is just like a little bit of this voice at the back of my head that's kind of like, this is going to be a lot. And that's really the thing that I'm worried about. It's like this game feels like it's going to consume my life, and I don't know if I want that at this point. I really don't, There are certain games that I am willing to put in the time for, but it's not like it's like I don't want it to be like the only thing that I'm doing. Right, because I have other things that I want to do outside of. I enjoy gaming very much. It's one of my hobbies. It's one of my favorite hobbies, right? But I also don't want it to be the only thing that I'm doing also. And my concern with Fortune's Weave is that it's going to be very consuming in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I might just be overthinking it. I think it probably is just going to be a case of like, hey, if you really don't want to, if you really don't want to play through, if you really don't want to deal with like the other management mechanics, social, the social links or whatever you want to call it, you don't have to deal with it, right? The issue, I think, is just that you are missing out on things. You are missing out on conversations and character development and stuff like that. So that's kind of where there's a lot of just concerns with that. And so with Trails in the Sky second chapter, I know what to expect, right? It's going to be probably very similar to the first chapter if the remakes kind of fall along the same sort of the same development in terms of their battle system or whatever. This is a one track, just, this is a singular story. There's not going to be multiple endings. I know that. This is an old game. And once I get through the story, I'm going to get through it. And it's not going to be this huge time sink. And for me right now, I kind of appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that I can get through a game once and know that is the game and I'm finished with it, right? I don't have to go back to it. I could. I usually don't. Once I roll credits, most of the time, that's the end of the game for me, and I move on to the next thing. And I kind of want to just like, one, I'm intrigued with where the story is going. The first game ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm very interested in seeing kind of where this goes. And I heard that second chapter is great. And I loved first chapter. I had so much fun with it. And if second chapter is even better, like that just raises my hopes. I love the combat. It's so much fun, and the music is great. Very interested in kind of seeing where the characters go. I think I'm really intrigued by that. And I'm already connected to that world a little bit, even with just this one game. So yeah, the Trails series kind of has me in that sort of way. I don't know if I'm going to go through the rest of the series, but at least through the first like 2-3 games, assuming that they remake the third game as well, I'm in it, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, I'm already invested my time into Trails. I kind of know what to expect, and I want to just go through the story of second chapter, and I guess just hearing the music just kind of triggered something for me. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I'm once again questioning whether I want to go with Three Houses, or not, excuse me, Fortune's Weave or Trails in the Sky right now. And I think that's just going to be something that's going to be on my mind for a month. It is. I'm just going to continue to think about it, because I'm having trouble deciding which game I want to play. But it's a good problem to have, because these both seem like really good games. And once again, I will be able to play either of these games later down the line. It's just a matter of like, which one am I craving more in the moment? Which one do I want to have at release? That's kind of the question. And right now, I don't have a definitive answer. So that's that. Anyways, I've rambled for long enough. I should probably get going to sleep. Thanks for listening. As always, this has been Stable Semantics, signing off.